Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Simone here, and today is going to be a very exciting video. We are going to be doing my favourite books of 2019, so these are the best of 2019. I have managed to narrow it down to 10 books. I was a bit unsure if I was going to be able to because I actually gave 30 books 5 stars in 2019, which is amazing, and I was literally thinking, how am I supposed to knock this down, and I managed to do it, which I was quite impressed with. So I have got a vaguely sort of 10 to 1 schedule, I guess. Most of these books I don't own. There's one I do because I still have it and I'm not going to get rid of this one because it was a gift, but yeah, every other book on this list I've unhauled because obviously, like I said in many videos, I don't keep books when I keep them. I don't keep books once I've read them, so I obviously don't have them anymore, but they were my favourites of the year. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So at number 10 on my list is Illumination by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and I'm really quite surprised this is on the list because although I loved it, but what I mean is going into it, I was really unsure, and I just wasn't sure how to feel about it. It's it's a fantasy novel, but it's also very much sci-fi, and it takes place in a world where basically there are planets that are aiming to destroy each other, basically. Then there's a virus, and I don't really want to go into too much detail about it because it's really interesting, but the main characters are Katie and Ezra, and they have both been in a relationship, and the day that the world starts to go a bit mad, or the worlds, they actually have just broken up. So it's kind of about these two different worlds, and there's a lot of multimedia in this book. So you have text messages, you have emails, you have like data logs, entry logs. There are a lot of characters to this, so you have you know, lots of different people in and out, and it can be a little bit confusing, but I absolutely loved this. The way it was written was really interesting, and I thought it was really well done, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend. I really want to read the second and third book in this series. I think it's Gemini and Obsidio, so I'm really looking forward to hopefully being able to pick those up at some point. Yeah, I absolutely loved Illuminate. I think it was one of the best books I read this year. So in 9th place is I See You by Claire Mackintosh, and this is the first of many thrillers on this list. I actually had a really good year this year. You may or may not know that at the beginning of 2019 I kind of made it more of a priority of mine to actually read thrillers and things that I really enjoy, and not try to just read books that were popular on BookTube. I previously have kind of tried to read books that I felt like people would be interested in hearing about, so I wasn't really reading the thrillers and stuff so much than the previous years to that, but I have absolutely loved the fact that I've really got into thrillers again this year. I've really loved reading them, and yeah, I just absolutely adore them. So, like I said, in 9th place is I See You by Claire Mackintosh. This is the second book by Claire Mackintosh, and this is my favourite of the two I've read. I did really like I Let You Go as well. I do have Let Me Lie to read by her as well, which I'm really looking forward to now. This follows a woman who finds her, or sees her picture in the back of a newspaper when she's on the tube, and all that's written on in this article basically is a telephone number and an email address, and there's no explanation as to why her face is in the newspaper and what that means. And then the next day she sees another woman, and it kind of goes from there. It's really kind of all over the place, very twisted, like twisty I should say, and kind of lots of things happening, and I didn't guess who did it at the end. It was just really well done, and yeah, I really loved all the characters in it, and I just think Claire Mackintosh for me always writes really great characters and just people that I want to root for. So yeah, I really enjoyed it and I would highly recommend. In 8th place is another one that I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about, but it is The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. I buddy read this one with Emily from Novel Novels, who I adore, and not only was it one of my favourite buddy reads or buddy reading experiences that I've had, but I just really enjoyed this book. So I was a bit skeptical going in, because I feel like most people I've heard talk about it either hate or love this book, and there is no real in between, but obviously it's on my list, so I have to have loved it. This follows a town where a parish councillor dies, and he dies right at the very start of the book, and he leaves what's known as a casual vacancy, which means that there is a space left open on the parish council. And basically then it's about the town and the sort of politics of the town, I guess, but it's also just about the individuals and the lives, and there are so many fun characters, and I just really enjoyed the like small town feel to this book. There was lots of, like I say, lots of different characters, everybody knew everybody. There was so many things happening that you just didn't see happening, like didn't see at the start. I really enjoyed how real this book was. There is a lot of swearing and a lot of graphic things in this book, so like definitely like trigger warnings for pretty much anything you can think of, but it just felt real to me. There was a lot of you know, talk about some real hard-hitting issues, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. And yeah, I think it is obviously completely different to J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter books, but I just think that you could still see her writing style in there, albeit for an older audience. But yeah, no, I absolutely thought it was really well written. I loved it, and I think that I definitely would continue to read anything else that J.K. Rowling wrote, no matter what she writes under or what type of book she writes. Then we have the book that I do own, and this is in place number 7. This is 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas by Adam Kay. This one is the sequel, I guess, to the This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, which I read last year and really loved. In fact, I'm pretty sure that was in my top 10 last year. This is a much shorter book, and this obviously is based around Christmas time. I was sent this by the lovely Victoria from What Victoria Read, so a massive thank you again to Victoria. I absolutely love this book. This one basically, if you don't know, This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay is a set of like diary entries which talk about, or his diary entries from when he was a doctor working for the NHS and in hospital, and he then published this one towards the end of this year, which basically is the Christmases that he spent working for the NHS, and I think this one details 7 Christmases. And yeah, it's really sort of eye-opening. It makes you realise that you know, these things are happening around the country. We rely on the NHS a lot, and I think this really just shows you exactly what the NHS is doing behind the scenes as well, and it's just a bit more real. It's also very gruesome, quite offensive, but I just think it was absolutely brilliantly done, and yeah, I would absolutely 100% recommend this one, and I absolutely loved it, and I think that it's definitely worth the read. In the place of number 6 is Still Missing by Chevy Stevens. This was my first Chevy Stevens book, and I read this towards the beginning of the year, I think, and I absolutely just loved this book. This basically follows a woman who works as a house, like she's selling houses, and she works a kind of open house where people can come and look at this house and see if they want to buy it or not. I think it's an American book. And she's working this open house, and right at the end of the day, when she's about to leave, this man turns up, and she thinks he's coming to look at the house, and he ends up abducting her, and he takes her to a kind of cabin in the mountains, and essentially she is his slave there for a number of years. And basically the book is from the perspective of after this has happened and she manages to escape. It's her having like therapy sessions or counselling sessions, and it's kind of about her unravelling what happened to her and her talking about it via these sessions and via someone at like a third party, and it's really, really interesting. I really enjoyed the like the elements of kind of trauma counselling in this, but I do obviously it's a stretch. Like it wouldn't, the way it is said is not something excuse me, the way it's said is not something that would genuinely happen, but I just think it was really well written. I really felt for the main character. I think that she's really well fleshed out, and she seemed like a real person. I felt like it could have been a real story. yeah, and I think that reading through, from the way that you read through it, it's kind of that after trauma, but there's more trauma there. And yeah, it was such a wonderful book, and the kind of the twists and turns kept coming, and yeah, it was really, really enjoyable read. It was definitely a 5-star read, and I do definitely want to read more Chevy Stevens in the future. Then in at number 5 is another non-fiction book, and that is Unnatural Causes by Dr. Richard Shepherd. This was another one that I buddy read, this time with Victoria and with Nicole, and yeah, I again love that buddy reading experience, but I just really loved this book. So this is a sort of memoir about Dr. Richard Shepherd's life. So it talks about him and how he grew up, but also the fact, so he is a forensic pathologist, and he works basically doing autopsies. He has done them for many very big kind of traumas, accidents, tragedies. He talks in the book about many different ones. He talks about his role in 9/11. There was just some really, really hard-hitting stories that he talked about. I have seen a lot of Dr. Richard Shepherd's, so he did a TV show called Autopsy, and I found that really, really fascinating. So when I realised it was him that had written this book, I was really, really open to reading it. I loved the descriptions of it. I found the book to just be... It also talks a lot about his mental health and the way that he's had to deal with, obviously, certain things that have happened he's obviously thinking about, and you know, when death happens in his own life, it's quite a difficult thing to get through. He talks about the struggles he has in terms of his relationship, because he's always on call basically, and obviously he's dealing with dead bodies all the time, so it's quite a big jump from that to go back into a normal family life. Yeah, and I was really fascinated to read about it anyway, but then also to hear about the more personal side of it was really really interesting, and yeah, it's definitely deserving of being on this list. Then we have at number 4, we have Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, which is my first and actually only Karen Slaughter book at the moment. However, there is currently one on my TBR. If you watched my video on Wednesday, you will have seen that, hopefully. The TBR did me dirty this month, but yes, we'll see if I get to it. But yes, it was my first Karen Slaughter book, and again, I buddy read this one. This was with Nadia from Fit and Beautiful Heart Reads. She doesn't have upload anymore, but she's very active on Twitter, so I will go and link her Twitter down below for you so you can go and check her out. I love Nadia a lot, and we buddy read Pretty Girls, and it was a really great experience again. Again, this is a book that I really, really enjoyed. This is a very, very gruesome, gory thriller. So if you are somebody who is a bit nervous about thrillers, or who has not read many thrillers before, I would not recommend this as a kind of introduction to that. This basically follows a woman who whose sister went missing 20 years ago, and she's now trying to figure out what happened to her sister, and in doing so she uncovers a lot of kind of secrets, and yeah, it's so well done. I don't even want to say too much else, because honestly every twist and turn like had me on the edge of my seat, and I was just really, really interested in finding out what would happen. I didn't really figure out what was going to happen either until the end, so it was just so well done. I didn't find it too gory for me, but then I have quite a high threshold when it comes to that, so I don't think that that's really any kind of indicator. Yeah, I really, really want to read more Karen Slaughter's books, because yeah, she is the type of author I like to read from, so yeah, definitely something I would continue reading. Then in at number 3, I have an author who I've read, I think, 3 of her books this year. This is a book by Daphne du Maurier, and this one is My Cousin Rachel. I had to really think about which one of her books was my favourite. I liked Rebecca, and I liked Jamaica Inn. I've read both of those, but I think for me, My Cousin Rachel just pipped it. I loved that one so, so much. And I really, really enjoyed reading it. She's definitely an author I'd like to read all of her works. But having read 3 of her books this year, it's just been a wonderful, wonderful time. So My Cousin Rachel is a kind of mystery, I guess. It's like a modern classic, but it follows a man who lives with his cousin, his older cousin, who kind of I guess looks after him. His cousin Ambrose goes away, and he ends up getting married to a woman named Rachel, and then he dies, and so Rachel, this man invites Rachel back to his house to stay with them, and it's kind of about what happens. There's lots of sort of petty things that happen, there's lots of twists and turns, it's whether you trust anyone, and yeah, it's just the way it's written. Daphne du Maurier has a wonderfully gothic style, so she writes she just writes scenery, and she writes kind of tension in such a wonderful way, and yeah, it's a great like Halloween read. It would definitely be a great sort of creepy evening read. I absolutely loved it, and I think it's definitely one that has stuck with me and I still think about now, so yeah, definitely in number 3 on my list. Then we have my second favourite book of the year, and this one is very surprising to me. This was Shelter in Place by Nora Roberts. Now, this is a book that I wasn't really sure about. I picked it up in my local supermarket. It was like £4, and I saw it and the cover just intrigued me, and then I found out Nora Roberts, I think, generally tends to write a lot of romance novels, which is totally, you know, she does very well at it. It's just that's not really my genre. So when I saw this, I was a bit unsure how I was going to feel about it. However, this is not a romance novel. It does have a romance element to it, which I think is actually really nice and really well written, but it is generally a kind of mystery thriller, I guess you'd say. This basically follows the aftermath of a mall shooting in America. So these 3 boys essentially went into a very busy shopping mall and shot a load of people and killed a lot of them, and now, however many years later, the boys were killed at the time, and now someone seems to be going around and trying to pick off the remaining survivors, and the main characters in it are a police officer who was there at the time, and he is now living on this sort of small island, like an island town, I guess, and also another main character whose name is Simone, which always makes me happy. I don't see that very often, and she was the first on the scene, essentially. She was the first person to call 999. She was the first person to call 911 and to alert the police to what was happening, because she was in the cinema at the mall at the time when it happened. And yeah, it's just about that. But it's them trying to figure out what's going on. It's really kind of gross and creepy in places. I just think it was so well written. It is quite a slow paced book, so it's not like a super fast paced everything happens all at once, but it's very kind of atmospheric, and you're reading it and you're almost looking around you, because there's that island feel, so you know, you don't have a kind of a wall to stand against. Almost, it's like there's space all around you, and yeah, it's just really well done, and yeah, I absolutely loved it, and it was, like I said, my second favourite, although it's a very, very big book, but yeah, I enjoyed it. And then we come on to my favourite book of the year, and I think that most of you will probably know what I'm about to say, because I have raved about this book a lot. This is 13 by Steve Kavanagh, and I've generally just loved Steve Kavanagh this year. I've read 13, and I've also read Twisted by him this year. I own another one of his books, and I want to read all of them because he's amazing. 13 is actually the 4th book in the Eddie Flynn series, which is a series about a lawyer named Eddie Flynn, and I love his character. I think he's so kind of honest, but you feel for him, but you also don't really know what's going to happen next. This 13 specifically, like I said, it is the 4th book, but you don't really have to read them in any order. I would like to go back and read the others, but 13 basically follows a serial killer who's got himself on the jury of his own crimes when someone else is being charged for it, and it's really, really weird. Just when I thought I knew what the twist was going to be, it wasn't, and it changed again, and yeah, I think Steve Kavanagh is incredibly talented. I believe he is actually, he's trained as a lawyer, and I think he is a lawyer who's now gone on to write a lot of books, and honestly I can't wait for his new book is coming out this year, I think, and I am absolutely beside myself excited about it, and I want to read everything he's ever written. But there you have it, guys. That is my top 10 books of 2019. I've had a great reading year. I ended up reading 132 books, which was 6 more than last year, which is amazing. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. I've set my goal again for 100 this year, so we'll just see what happens. But yeah, I'm so excited to continue reading into 2020. I'm feeling really good about it. Yeah, so let me know in the comments down below, what was your favourite? Give me your top 3 books of 2019. I'd love to know. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time for another video. Bye guys.